Welcome back to Get It Right. Today with us is Dr. Jonathan Muriuki, who is the country representative for Kenya ICRAF, who is telling us more about deforestation and its disastrous effects. Dr. Jonathan, before we went for our break, we were talking about livestock ranching and logging, some of the reasons why we've encountered deforestation. Yes, what is the alternative now to mitigating this?
I think one of the things that is causing deforestation is demand for wood products more than actually livestock ranching. Because we have 4 categories of wood products that are leading deforestation. One of them are timber products, and they are lucrative trend, including globally. Then we have charcoal and associated firewood, because at least 80% of the country population depends on firewood one way or another, either as charcoal or firewood. And then there is also the poles and construction materials that people have to utilize for that. So that is the main leading cause of deforestation. Livestock ranching is not necessarily a cause of deforestation, because you can easily do trees and livestock very well as long as you have the right approaches to do that. And especially what we talk about is controlling to ensure you have carrying capacity, the right monitoring so that you do not degrade. Grass and trees grow very well together.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what contributes most to deforestation and forest degradation here in Kenya?
It is about wood products. So we have got 2 categories of forests. Okay, they could be more, because you have the forest in the highlands, which are the forests that are really known and the ones that have a lot of political issues.
Yeah.
Then you have the dryland forest, which for a long, long time were not being categorized as forests, were just being called woodlands. And then you have the coastal forests, the mangroves. So the highland forests are the ones that have got very good quality timber. And those ones, it is timber that causes deforestation over there. The drylands forests are the best sources of charcoal. So firewood and charcoal are the causes of deforestation there. While in the mangroves at the coast, it's basically construction industry.
So agriculture is very important for human survival, and also it's been considered as 80% direct driver for deforestation. What is your take on that?
So agriculture as a driver for deforestation is based on the traditional methods of farming, which were called shifting cultivation. So farmers would cut a small portion, grow their crops, then go to the next portion and leave this land to regenerate, what we call fallowing. Fortunately, the populations were low that time. The global population in the last 250 years has moved from 1 billion people to 8 billion people now. So it is no longer possible to do shifting cultivation, and farmers have to stay on the same piece of land for long. However, there are many methods of ensuring that you do not lose fertility and you can practice sustainable agriculture on the same plot of land, which means then that we can close some forests, which we call land sparing, and they remain as forests all the time, where we have what we call intensified agriculture, including incorporation of trees in those portions of land. And agriculture can then produce wood material, while at the same time producing enough food for feeding the populations. As it were, currently we have about 5 tons per hectare yield gaps in the high potential areas in this country, because farmers are not doing intensive agriculture as should be. So we can intensify the land that is already cultivated now and not cut more forests.
Okay. So Dr. Jonathan, maybe you can tell us more about the key components of this protection law, forest protection laws.
Talking about the key components, you got to look at what is flowing in there. For example, the Forest Act looks at protecting what we call the natural forests. Natural forests are forests that have not been interfered with. It is indigenous species that are growing there. And we've not cut them out and transformed them into plantations for timber production. Those ones are supposed to be protected under the Forest Act, but it's also the Kenya Water Towers Act, and there's also the Environmental Coordination and Management Act. The forests are supposed to be maintained as intact, and where they have been destroyed, to be allowed to grow back naturally.
Okay.
And the Kenya Forest Service is responsible for that. However, the Wildlife Act also looks at the forests where wildlife is a key component. For example, the Mount Kenya National Park is a forest, but then it has a huge wildlife base that Kenya Wildlife Service is interested in. There is also the Community Land Act. The Community Land Act looks at the land which communities take them as their land. It is not divided into individual possessions and given land titles, but it's managed by the community institutions at the institutional level. It allows any conversion of that land to only be determined by the community led by the county in discussions with the county. Now, also the Agriculture Act now has got what we call the farm forestry regulations, which were revised also in 2016, which says that farmers should have at least 10% of their land covered by trees. We need to break down that a bit to show what that 10% means.
So how does deforestation affect crop production?
There are many ways in which deforestation affects crop production, but the main one, which I have just mentioned in relation to biodiversity, is the whole issue of pollination. And what we are seeing is that because of the loss of various nectar-producing trees, bees are moving from some environments into others. And deforestation is one of the main reasons that that's affecting. There are some trees that are, and also herbaceous plants, that are good in terms of nectar production than others. So once those trees have been eliminated, then the bees do not have food for themselves, and therefore they have to move into areas where they can find food for themselves, because nectar is their food. So the more the forests are moved away from the agricultural landscapes, then the more the bees move away, and especially when there is no water for the bees. Yeah, so pollination, when the pollinators are affected, that's a major way in which production is affected, in addition now to the issues of soil fertility.
Maybe you can tell us some of the species that farmers should consider planting, tree species.
I think because we are coming from a deforestation conversation, there are quite a number of them. Eucalyptus is a major one,
Yes.
although as we have said, you need to plant it away from water streams because of it. It's a very thirsty tree species. We have others like Casuarina. We have, it's called whistling pine. Mainly grows at the coast, but also grows in the semi-arid lands. We have others like Graveria robusta. It is growing very much in Mount Kenya area. If you go to Meru, we almost have every farm covered by that, and quite a number of others that are producing wood. But then there are a few others that produce other utilities, like fodder for livestock. We have a species called Coriandra that came from Mexico, others called Lucinas, and other trees that are also grown for firewood. So especially in the dry areas, the acacias, the terminarias are trees you can grow for firewood. Okay. But because you need to have specific trees for specific areas, our organization has produced an app called Africa Tree Species Finder. Wherever you're standing on the Google platform, you can download it from the Google platform, and then it will be able to tell you where you are, what trees you can grow for what purposes in that area. And anybody with an Android phone can get that one. It's a free app for farmers to use. Yeah.
That sounds very interesting.
Yes.
So let's look at the role of deforestation when it comes to climate change.
A good question there, because cutting of trees are the only known carbon sinks. Yes. Carbon dioxide is among the biggest greenhouse gases, as explained earlier, and trees are the only organism that utilize carbon dioxide to make energy and food. And therefore, when we cut the trees, all that carbon that is held in the tree, because most of the tree is carbon, just goes back to the air. This is what we call carbon flux. We want all the carbon in the soil and less in the atmosphere. But when we release more and more carbon in the atmosphere, carbon dioxide, then we get global warming, which contributes to climate change.
Okay.
Yes.
So how do trees and forests relate to the entire climate change issue?
I think the question is two-way. Trees get affected by, and forests get affected by climate change. For example, when it warms up, we get more pests that affect trees.
Yes.
It also gets very hot, and so it is easy to catch forest fires. And forest fires are a big destructor of forests, contributing to forest degradation. So trees themselves and forests are affected by climate change. But forests are the only known ways to mitigate climate change. And therefore, the more forests we can get back, especially the natural forests, then the less we can get of global warming. Yeah.
So we talked a bit about greenhouse gas emission.
Yes.
So what is the relationship between deforestation and greenhouse gases?
As I have said, when deforestation happens, trees are cut. Either they are burned so that we create agriculture, or they are burnt as charcoal, but anything that allows those trees to convert back to carbon dioxide is contributing to greenhouse gases. Because carbon dioxide is the biggest greenhouse gas. Therefore, deforestation, all the standing trees are actually carbon. Once they are converted, they become carbon dioxide, it goes to the air.
All right.
So when you deforest an area, for example, equivalent to Nairobi County, those are tons and tons of carbon going back to the air. And that's more greenhouse gases, that's more heat for you.
Okay. So, Dr. Jonathan, some parts of this country experience floods whenever we happen to have heavy rainfall. So,
Yes.
can we blame that on deforestation?
Well, not entirely, but it takes a huge, huge part of the blame.
Okay.
So when it rains, it floods, and then the water is not stored well enough to sustain a river ecosystem. So we can blame it very much on the deforestation, and Mau has a big role to play about that.
And there is this initiative by the government to see that by the year 2022,
Yes.
every county across the country has planted around 1 million trees.
Yes.
So what is being done about this?
A lot is being done. First is to say it's an easy target to achieve. That would be 47 millions. But we need the political will. This initiative was led by the Prime Minister himself. He was out there planting. The cabinet was out there planting. And when the conversation is owned by everyone, then it is possible to do that. What are the processes that make sure that the trees that are planted then grow to become useful trees? And that's a conversation we are doing. As our organization, we have a project called Regreening Africa, which is done in 8 countries, but Kenya is one of the countries where we're looking at the policies to ensure the conversation brings everybody together to plan together. And the other thing we are doing with the Ministry of Agriculture is to come up with an agroforestry strategy that will lead the counties and develop action plans that will take us there. I am very confident that we can reach this target by 2022.
So, Dr. Jonathan, as I was saying, there is something you've mentioned that is really great. You know, just not focusing on planting trees, but rather growing the trees.
Yeah.
And now, as we wind up our program for today, what is your parting shot?
My parting shot would be like, we need to make painful decisions in this country because deforestation itself is painful. And if we take the painful decision of saying, move timber production out of gazetted forest and take them into agricultural land, we'll be able to have this conversation about deforestation coming to an end. Yes. Otherwise, it will be an iterative cycle that does not achieve any means. So let everyone, the farmers, the government, the media, the NGOs, the policymakers come together and say, we need to put this to an end. Otherwise, we are losing our country. Thank you so much.
There you have it, brilliant ideas from Dr. Jonathan on how we can be able to mitigate deforestation. That is all we had for you today. Until next time, it's bye-bye for now.